What if I asked you to write down the name of all your professional connections? How many would that be? When was the last time you talked to one of them? Would any of those names recommend you for a job or help you negotiate compensation on an offer? Would they sponsor you for a promotion or help you fill an open role on your team? Would they give you feedback on your women in product talk? Well, hopefully at the end of the session, you'll be able to confidently answer all of these questions and more. Hi, I'm Kalia, like Kalia on the phone, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about one of my favorite topics, connections and communities, and what I'm dubbing the 150 plus club. You might be asking yourself, why should I be listening to this girl? What can she possibly share that I couldn't already Google? Good question. I asked myself the same thing. But first, I want to start with a little confession. I've never really thought about how to form connections or community. It's always come really natural to me. A big thanks goes to my mom for that. She modeled for me at a very young age what it meant to form connections and community, and I just followed in her footsteps. I remember walking into her work and everyone knew me and the latest thing going on in my life. It was a little bit creepy, to be honest, stranger danger, you know. But when I asked my mom about those people, she knew everything about them, what their children were doing in school, if they brought good snacks to work, if they were good or bad at their job, and if they could take extra shifts and cover for her when she couldn't come in. My mom built a community at work, and she took care of them, and they just as quickly always had her back. I thought this is how it worked. And ever since, I followed her lead and have valued connections and community in my own work. I didn't really think that this was special or unique. And it wasn't until I started getting feedback from my peers and managers that I realized that this was actually a skill, and moreover, something that other people wanted to learn. I thought that it was normal to have contacts and mentors in the C-suite at Fortune 500 companies and early stage startups who just text you back when you have a question or hop on a call when you need it. I didn't think it was anything special when I created a Slack space after leaving a company and over 200 people joined just to stay connected with me. But according to the people I trust and experts on the topic, forming connections and communities is my superpower. Today, I hope to put to words what I do so that you too can wield the same superpower. No radioactive spiders needed. Drop in the chat with a few words of what you hope to gain from this session. I personally believe that we are in the midst of a paradigm shift when it comes to work and careers. The time for asking ourselves where we want to work is less important than who we want to work for or with. The Great Resignation or the Great Reshuffle has changed the way both companies and talent think about what it means to work. Remote or in office, part-time or full, corporate or startup, everyone is reassessing everything. And in the midst of change, I believe that meaningful connections and community will remain when the dust settles. And the best way to ensure that you get what you need out of this time is to get good at this work, both as an individual contributor and as a leader. Now, there's so much to say about this topic, and we couldn't possibly finish everything in this one session, but I've included a resource that will hopefully fill in some of the gaps and provide more depth. But we'll also have an interactive Q&A session later today that you're welcome to join to talk more. So let's get into it. Anyone can build community. Lots of people come to me saying that they don't think they're good at networking or meeting people or recruiting for people on their team. But I truly believe that anyone can form meaningful connections and build community. All you need to do is talk. And the way you can get started is by targeting the right audience or people. It all starts with thinking about what your goal is. What are you trying to accomplish? What gaps are you trying to fill? Are you starting off at a new company and need to learn about how it works? Have you been thinking about changing industries and you're not sure about how to pivot? Did your company just go through a reorg or an acquisition and you're not sure if you want to stay? Based on what your goal is, you can start to determine who you should be reaching out to individually or what groups. If you feel comfortable, drop in the chat something that you're looking to work on or get answered. As an example, let's use the case of being new at a company. Your goal is to start strong, know who's who and how best to operate. You should probably start with your stakeholders, the other product managers, developer, or QA folks that you'll be working with day in and day out. That's a no-brainer. I'd also suggest teams or people that not necessarily have an impact, a direct impact into your work, like legal, security, or marketing teams, depending on your remit. These teams go often missed, but building these connections in an area that you don't necessarily know a lot about will only benefit your learning. As an added challenge, I would suggest reaching out to leadership at your skip level or higher. This might sound bold or risky, but I promise you that fear is unwarranted. The worst case is they say no. When I was at the Walt Disney Company, I would regularly ask SVPs or VPs for one-on-ones to learn more about their vision for their teams or to get advice on something that I was trying to work out. I think that really set me apart from my peers and had the added bonus of giving me name recognition moving forward with those leaders. Even today, when I no longer work there, those leaders are still invested in my future and reach out as they build new teams at new companies. If this sounds like a daunting task, don't worry, you can dig into my resource for more details on how to get started. Now, you've identified who to target. What's next? I say authentically show up. To me, this means being yourself, both in what you say and how and where you say it. The way I built connections in community might look different than how you will. You have to figure out what is most comfortable. If you're not a big talker, setting up a million one-on-ones with new strangers at your company might not feel the most comfortable. So maybe you opt for written communication like Slacks or introduction emails instead. This piece will take a little bit of self-discovery, but you'll have to figure out what authentically showing up means for you. I believe in you. But if you really need some help, I've included some sample scripts, topic ideas, and outreach messages that you can use to get started. For me, I love to talk to people. Strangers or not, if you're around me, I will strike up a conversation. No one is safe. And so in the workplace, that means I have a lot of one-on-ones via Zoom or in person. And on a slow week, I can have about 10 internal and 4 external check-ins. I also love a good phone call. While working at home, it's been a great way to connect and stay connected, but be able to do other things around the house. I'm sure, as you can guess, I never seem to have enough time to talk to all the people that I want. Authentically showing up to me also means being vulnerable. I don't mean vulnerable in that you unpack your childhood trauma with your boss, but it does mean sharing a little bit about yourself with others. We are humans, and forming bonds is a natural evolutionary process, but it happens when you create opportunities for others to engage with you. For example, I recently started to share information about my neurodiversity with people at work. It's been useful in giving others insight in how to work with me and reasons for why I might do certain things. But it's also been a great way for me to meet new people at the company who share my neurodivergent thinking. That similarity is a powerful foundation for forming connections. Employee resource groups or communities like Women in Product or Tequeria are other venues for forming these types of identity-based connections. I encourage you to seek out these groups and engage with these communities that already exist. What are some companies that have brought you value? Please drop them in the chat so other people can learn and maybe explore those other communities. Next, link up your connections or community. Now, I have a pretty vivid metaphor I can share with you about why this is a good idea, but you'll have to stick with me for 1 minute. Have you ever thought about why Velcro is so strong? Well, I do. And the reason is that hooks and loops that are on them, made out of nylon, or links if you call them, are the reason why a substance is strong. The more hooks and loops that are attached to the surface area, the stronger the bond is. Now, I'm not suggesting that you Velcro yourself to other people, although that would be hilarious. I'm suggesting you link your connections together to form communities when appropriate to form stronger bonds. For example, if you find yourself in one-on-ones talking about the same thing, but with different people, connect them. First, it'll save your calendar, but it'll also create a deeper bond since those individuals have shared interests, and that's the beginning of a great community. In a previous role, I had heard from multiple product managers that they were missing a venue to talk about crazy ideas and creative solutions to pressing business needs. So I set up a meeting with those 5 product folks, and eventually we created a company-wide meeting called the Product Roundtable that gave us the venue to share ideas, do thought leadership exercises, and just learn a little bit more about other people on the product team. This is a great example of how powerful the practice of linking your connections around community can be. And last but not least, keep it going. After you put in all this hard work, finding the right people to talk to, crafting meaningful connections and conversations, don't let all that hard work go to waste without a strong follow-up. The appropriate way to follow up will always depend on the circumstances. But let's go back to the example of being new at a company. I suggest after you make your initial connections with folks to set up recurring meetings with them, weekly or bi-weekly with your stakeholders, monthly or quarterly with that second tier of folks that aren't a part of your day-to-day. Just because you have the meetings scheduled, don't always mean that you need to keep them. But seeing them on your calendar act as a good reminder to check in with those connections and keep those relationships alive. It's also nice because if you ever have to cancel, you always have free space in your calendar. But that's just a little secret tip. For another example, let's say you found a connection that could be a mentor for your career. Maybe they're VP of product or SVP at a different company based in Germany while you're living and working in the US. Setting up a quarterly one-on-one might not be feasible given their work schedules and the time difference. But instead, you could opt for a quarterly email check-in where you share what you've accomplished in your role and share questions that you'd like advice on from them in the future. This is a great way to stay connected that is flexible enough based on your availability and the level of access and engagement that you can have from someone who's living abroad. Another way you can keep these connections or community going is to bring value. This means not just taking, but also giving back. For example, if you have a mentor, you're constantly taking from them through seeking advice and career guidance. But these are also individuals that are usually higher up in companies and have responsibilities like hiring or strategic alignment. And so sometimes they're out of the day-to-day execution work of the product. But I found that helping these folks fill open roles on their team is a powerful way to give back. I leverage my own community and network to be able to fill their talent pipeline with people that they know I trust and endorse. Another example is sharing articles of topics that they might be interested in. For example, a new startup that was just funded that's in the same industry as your mentor, or articles about leadership departures at companies they might be interested in joining. Being able to provide value for someone who gives to you is a vital part of maintaining a meaningful connection. We've all read The Giving Tree, I'm sure, and nothing is sadder than that stump. Don't leave stumps. As we continue to shift, or as we continue to talk, I want to shift to talking about what getting good at all of this can get you. And first of which is what many call a board of directors. Everyone needs a personal board of directors. The Muse has a great article talking all about this, but in short, a personal board of directors is a group of people and mentors that you can leverage to further your career. They might help you find job openings and set up information interviews. They might help you negotiate compensation, or they might offer you a role in the future. Although this is a great article, one thing that I think is missing is the actual how of building it. And I hope that the framework I've shared will allow you to be able to do so. It did for me. And I won't go into all the whys that they put more eloquently about why it's important to have a personal board of directors. But I will say this. Once you've figured out how to build one properly, you will likely never need to cold apply for jobs ever. The time and energy you put into getting good at developing your connections will pay off tenfold when it comes to finding new roles. Other people in this space, like Becca Camp, an executive coach, and her third link rule talk much more about this concept, and I suggest you check it out if you need more convincing. In the chat, please drop what is something that you personally could use from our personal board of directors right now. I'd be interested to know what problems and challenges all of you are trying to solve. And finally, if after all of this you haven't learned anything new, I have one last thing to share. All of us, even the pros, have weak spots in our community. Let's say you do all the things I've already mentioned. Great, I'm impressed, you're a gem. But let me ask you this. How many people do you have in your community that you're close with that don't look or sound like you? How many people do you have that work in different industries? How many people live in a different country than you, speak a different primary language, voted in the last election for the other candidate? You don't need to be connected to everyone all the time, but you should audit once in a while and make sure that you're not just surrounding yourself with people who never challenge you always agree, and think the same. The best of us will always have gaps unless we do something about it. I suggest to set a cadence, perhaps quarterly, perhaps yearly, where you look and review all the connections that you have. Do you need to adjust based off of new goals that you have? Or did you make a significant amount of growth in a certain skill set and now need to develop another? Taking stock of what you're missing and seeking out ways to fill them is essential to maintain a community and meaningful connections. For example, if you're a product executive, I'd suggest you take a look at your calendar. How much of your time have you set aside to talk to individual contributors that don't directly report to you? One of my favorite executives had the worst calendar I'd ever seen. Meetings and calls on the weekend, back to back during the week, but they held sacred blocks of time each week dedicated to meeting with their mentees. Not only do they now have a great way to hear about the inner workings of the organization, they also have a contingency of talent they've cultivated who will likely be eager to fill open roles on their team or even move with them to new companies. It's natural to gravitate toward the similar, so we have to force ourselves to check in and make sure that we aren't leaving too many weak spots in our community. All right, I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. And so I would love to hear from you in the comments about what is something that you learned today that you heard for the first time. I would love to hear what stood out for everyone. And so let's recap. All of us, even the pros, have weak spots in our community. We want to combat those echo chambers and expose ourselves to divergent thinkers. Everyone needs a board of directors. Gone are the days of corporate loyalty, and connections are the new currency for your career. And lastly, anyone can build a community. Finding what works for you and your style is all that it takes. I hate to break it to you, but doing your job is no longer enough. Connections and community are the key that can unlock the next level of your career. Just doing your job is an investment in the company, but how are you investing in your career? I say, get good at this and join the 150 Plus Club with me and build that community. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed this session. My goal today was twofold. One, to hopefully share something new about the topic of building meaningful connections in community. And two, a personal challenge to attempt to put in words what has been so abstract to me for so long. I hope that we each other have started building meaningful connections with each other today, and I look forward to continuing that in our interactive session today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Talk soon.